Council Corral, a review of the Springfield City Council meeting each and every week, be it a committee of the whole, as it was last night, or a full City Council meeting, as it was last week. We kind of highlight what's going on at Springfield City Hall. And in a way, even for those of you who don't live in or around Springfield, I think it's instructive just to kind of look at some of the major issues that are facing your elected officials on a local level. Now, of course, not every jurisdiction is a municipality. Some are villages, so there are different makeups as far as just who exactly is an elected official there. Is it a board trustee, or is it an alderperson that has wards? So there's different types of makeups for local governments. But as we move on with the Council Corral here, it's I think something that we need to just remind people. Local government impacts you on a local basis considerably. From the public works and making sure your sewers are up to grade, or making sure that you have sufficient law enforcement or firefighters in some municipalities like Springfield, for instance. So a lot of focus on a variety of things. But last night, there was an interesting ordinance up for consideration during the Committee of the Whole, which in Springfield City Council is like, you've got ordinances that are proposed, and they go through, 3 readings, essentially, right? First reading published on a Friday before a Committee of the Whole. Then they get to a second reading during the Committee of the Whole, where they either put it on a consent agenda or they put it on a debate agenda. Consent agenda is lumping them all together to where they pass them all at once on third reading at a full city council meeting. If they put it on the debate agenda, then they debate those one by one during the full city council meeting for final passage on third reading. So last night is a committee of the whole. So Friday, they had the publication of all the ordinances, and I think there were like 28 ordinances, and they go through during a committee of the whole, and they play traffic cop as to, is it going on consent or is it going on debate? So these are all up for consideration as to consent or debate. One in particular, kind of fascinating, a $1.2 million settlement for a parcel of property in Springfield to deal with rail relocation. And this is after some jury verdict. So what's going on here is a question that was asked on the City Council Committee of the Whole last night. And what exactly is going on here?
We had a jury verdict. What's the story with this?
It's Alderman Hanna.
So this was a condemnation proceeding on a parcel of property on 9th Street that went to, we had a jury trial because the parties could not come to an agreed valuation. And this was that was the amount set by the jury. We're doing this agreed verdict and paying it so we can obtain title to proceed with the construction.
So clearly, the rail relocation, we've seen a lot of properties that have been essentially transferred of hands from the private owner to maybe the city or the county that's dealing with rail relocation, upgrading the rail lines through Springfield. So it's been a years-long process. I've seen houses and properties go for $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, but $1.2 million is interesting because it was a number that was brought about through court action. So apparently, and I don't know the complete background, but there was a difference of opinion about the property and what its value was, especially if eminent domain is going to be considered in these types of cases. Maybe you have to go to a jury and have them spell out what's going on. So interesting to see that. Another line item for spending brought up last night at the Committee of the Whole.
Of contract number PW 24-06-35 with AFE Construction, LLC, for the construction and addition and roof at the African American History Museum in an amount not to exceed $822,225 for the Office of Public Works.
Motion for consent.
Second.
So that was put on the consent agenda, and it's $822,000 for a roof for the African American History Museum here in Springfield. There was an additional $220,000, I believe, that was put on the consent agenda for that organization as well. So, just the spending levels involved here. You have other issues that were brought up, including bringing about a lobbyist for the city of Springfield. Jessica Basham with Basham Government Solutions is going to be brought on for a total cost of $75,000. And the city had, under the previous administration, a different lobbying outfit. But Basham Government Solutions, Jessica Basham is a former high-ranking officer for former House Speaker Michael Madigan. She would believe was the chief of staff for Madigan in the final couple of years of his tenure as the longest-serving House Speaker. Madigan's now facing 23 federal corruption charges, 22 of which he goes on trial for up in Chicago in April. If you recall, it's the ComEd 4 and Madigan involved and, pay for play type stuff and using his official office for private gain. Those are the allegations. He's pleaded not guilty, but those who have pleaded not guilty also in the ComEd 4, they were found guilty. Even Madigan's former House clerk was found guilty of lying to the FBI about that whole stuff. Anyways, Jessica Basham, now out of the public sector in the private sector as a lobbyist. It looks like she's going to be getting the job at $75,000 to lobby for the city of Springfield. Here's some of what she had to say last night.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jessica Basham with Basham Government Solutions. I know that you've all been provided a document with some of my background and experience information. I won't go into details about that unless there's any questions, but what I will say is I am incredibly excited about the opportunity to represent the city as a lifelong resident of the city of Springfield. I'm also very excited to sit down with each of you and talk about some of the priorities that you have for your own wards.
So she goes on to talk about the efforts of lobbying at the State House, but for those who aren't familiar, there's this organization called the Illinois Municipal League, and it's an association very much like the Manufacturers Association or the Firefighters Association. It's an association, a private entity that has municipalities as dues-paying members. And the Illinois Municipal League lobbies at the State House for municipalities and looks at state laws that might be impacting municipalities. So the Illinois Municipal League is a lobbying arm. Alderman Brad Carlson asked an interesting question. Why are we bringing on a lobbyist here? Aren't we members of the Illinois Municipal League in the city of Springfield?
Are we members of the IML, the Municipal League?
Yes.
Okay. And what do we pay a year to them?
Good question.
Corporation Council?
It's a very minimal amount.
Okay.
I can get you the
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm curious, yeah.
And I think it's way less than $75,000. So regardless, the thinking is that having a dedicated lobbyist for the city of Springfield, they'll be able to delve into more Springfield-specific issues because Springfield has a city-owned electric generation facility, City Water, Light, and Power. It's owned by the city. It's a coal-fired power plant. So that's makes the city of Springfield unique. Springfield's also the capital city. So a lot of different things in as far as, the city losing out on property tax dollars because there's a lot of government facilities in the city of Springfield. So that makes it unique as well. So there's a lot of other different types of things that, Springfield specifically needs a lobbyist for. But you had Alderman Redpath ask an important question about something that's more of a larger issue, not just for the city of Springfield, but for other municipalities. And that's the ongoing exorbitant cost for first responder public safety pensions, those who retire from the police force or those who retire from the fire department. They obviously have pensions, and the funding of those pensions takes a lot of resources, and it's continuing to escalate. Even in the city of Springfield, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like $200+ million of unfunded pension liability just for police and fire pensions. That's just for the city of Springfield. So Redpath asked a question about what she can do as lobbyists for the city of Springfield to go to the State House to try to find some resolution here.
So since I've been on the city council, the biggest issue that we've faced is the pension issue with our police and fire. You and I have had a discussion about that, and I know that this is a critical situation for every municipality around the state. Do you foresee any kind of movement that we can provide to get the legislature to look at the extension of our time frame for when we have to fund our pensions?
Well, Alderman, I'm sure you're aware, and as you just pointed out, it's a serious issue that has been discussed for a number of years in Springfield. I think it's a matter of continuing those conversations, looking for the right timing opportunity. So, I hate to say that governments have been flush with cash. There's never enough resources to meet all of the priorities, but these last several years have been, an opportunity for a lot of municipalities to grow a lot of reserves. Obviously, some are in better position than others, but that's probably likely to change in the next several years.
Well, the whole culture of the legislature's changed over the last few years, and things are different now. Is there any is there any opening for us to make a move to try to get that not force that issue, because we don't want to force anything on them. But anyway, to get the discussion started, because it is a problem for us. And every year we battle how much money that we're going to put into the pension system. And we've already got a request this year to put a lot more in there. And, there's only enough money just to go around. And we just got to make sure that we do our best to try to move that along if we could.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. With the changing legislature and changing dynamics, there's always an opportunity to seek out those discussions and hopefully become more successful than
I think
in
you're the
previous
person
years.
for the job, by the way. So.
We'll watch how that plays out. Of course, I'm at the State House covering that for the Center Square in my full-time gig. So that's clearly something that we hear about all the time is pension issues. But what's being talked about there is what some say is kicking the can down the road. Because you got a pension ramp that by 2040, I believe it is, or 2045, you got to get to 90% funding. 90% funding. But you look at the state's pensions, it's only about 45% funded. You look at the consolidated public safety pensions that's currently in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. You've got the consolidated pension funds that's about 50+% funded, I think, and it's different for each municipality. But regardless, that's an ongoing issue. Is the answer to, quote, kick that can down the road? Or is it to maybe open up the Illinois Constitution to reduce benefits? Or maybe it's to use more tax dollars to upload and front load the unfunded liability so that it doesn't continue to take away resources. These are all important questions. Ongoing with the Council Corral, you've got another ordinance in front of the Springfield City Council concerning the fire department. And in particular, you've got more spending requested by the Springfield Fire Department.
An ordinance authorizing a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,014,500 to cover additional salary costs in FY24 for the Springfield Fire Department.
Move to consent.
Second.
So that's put on consent agenda, and Fire Chief Canny was there to talk about the need to cover overtime costs.
So when we budgeted last year, we knew we were going to be short. Even at that time, Alderman Hanauer recognized that we were going to be short and added some money to our line at that time. And we knew because we haven't hired that overtime line was going to be was going to grow. With your report that I sent you last month and then the one I sent this month, you can see why it is and where those where we are hurting at. Not having enough people to staff to meet that minimum manning that's required causes overtime.
So clearly there's ongoing conversations about the overtime costs. And why we always run into this, listen, I've been covering the city council here in Springfield for like 12 or 13 years. And every year they pass a budget. Every year when they pass the budget, they talk about, well, we're always surprised by overtime costs. And then they pass the budget, and then months later, they're surprised by overtime costs. And the overtime costs, as you saw there, more than $1 million worth. Alderman Hanauer says, listen, we gotta change our tactics here. And instead of being surprised by this, we gotta budget this in.
I do want to bring up, and it's more for the upcoming budget, Mayor and Ramona, in that I think that we need to go back and look and see what our average of overtime was for the past 5 years. We've been playing this game where we know that the overtime's, let's say, $3 million, and we only put $1 million in their overtime. We know I said it back during budget season. I don't understand why we're playing this game. It makes our budget look good, but we know we're gonna get hit for this extra cost. Now I would like to see where we're at, how we've done this year compared to past years on overtime, because we have hired some people. Mm-hmm. We've hired a class the year before, and we keep hearing, well, we keep hiring, and overtime's going to go down. And I just want to see where we're at total compared to past years too. So
I'll be happy to get you a historical report over the past 5 years and see.
But I would just ask for budget. Let's be real about this on the overtime. This game of only putting $1 million in when we know that number isn't correct. I still don't understand why we did it unless it was to try to to make the budget look better. I don't know, but
Right, I can't answer that either.
yeah.
So.
So we gotta, I guess, be more clear and realistic with the issue of overtime. And it's, again, something that's perennial, happens every year. They pass the budget, and then they come back and say, oh, we have overtime costs. Some of that overtime cost being driven by minimum manning. And that's something that Alderman Chuck Redpath asked Chief Canny about. Minimum manning, what's going on there?
The minimum manning number, is that an executive decision or is that done by contract?
By contract.
Okay, thank you.
So just so it's clear, the minimum manning is negotiated in a contract with the firefighters union. So that's something that's driving the cost. Maybe that's something that could be ratcheted back a bit. You don't need, X number of firefighters to show up to a medical call, for instance. In Springfield, that happens a lot. You don't need an entire large fire truck to show up to a health emergency. Maybe a smaller truck with smaller staff can show up and help EMS who might show up. So clearly there's some ongoing costs, and all of this diverts away from maybe that's $1 million that could go into the pensions, right? So interesting to see some of the conversations on a local level in the city of Springfield and how that could impact, say, your local government. Continuing on with the Council Corral here, it's Bishop on air. Thanks for hanging out. You had an ordinance up for consideration at this the Springfield Police Department for a robot. A mini caliber robot. What exactly is this mini caliber robot that's costing $63,000 for the Springfield Police Department? Here is Police Chief Scarlett's taking that question and answering it.
Certain details I'd like to not disclose publicly, but it's
whatever you can. How's
yeah,
that?
absolutely.
I did have someone ask me, why is the police department buying a robot?
Well, it's actually an essential part of a lot of the operations within our agency, specifically SWAT-related procedures. If there's anything that we can do to de-escalate situations to where it's not an officer on suspect encounter, then we certainly want to do that. And by sending in, technology components, we have drones, we utilize those also. We have canines, so this is just one more facet of that we can use in various job-related functions.
Thank you. And again, I had
So what is a mini caliber robot? If you just do a quick Google search, you can see it's one of these track type robots that has an arm on it, for instance. Probably, you can put several cameras on it. You can even, what's this? It looks like there's some kind of attachment there. Is that, what is that? Is that some kind of firearm device or something? So yeah, these are interesting robots used in a variety of different ways. Clearly, it's something that I think is, interesting. The city of Springfield needs that, saying it's a useful tool. So again, just some of the spending and the conversations around it at the Springfield City Council meeting. All right, moving on now. It was time for, and only about a 50-minute meeting last night for the Committee of the Whole. So looking at the end of the meeting here, you had former Springfield Alderman Joe McMiniman. If you recall, last week with the Council Corral, we reviewed how there were a bunch of ordinances concerning police pay and pay increases and salary bumps and such. Alderman McMiniman, former alderman, he wanted to speak on each one of those, but he was only given 5 minutes, and he said that he was going to complain to the Attorney General's office. He was even going to go to the Inspector General because he felt that as a former alderman, he should have been given more time to be able to speak on each particular ordinance. But city rules say that you only have 5 minutes as a member of the public to address the city council. So they adhered to that, and he wasn't too happy. So he showed up last night to take another 5 minutes to talk about a variety of things. Here's former Springfield Alderman Joe McMiniman.
There were 3 ordinances having to do with the police, and one of those ordinances had to do with the collective bargaining agreement, and I've already mentioned what I said about that. I was really concerned about the 13% in 1 year and the impact it can have on encouraging retirements, and because people would want to spike their pension. And I don't mean to offend anyone when I talk about spiking the pensions, but when I came on the council and sat in Ward 7 seat, we worked hard to eliminate the fire pension spiking, the police pension spiking, and then I didn't realize that there was spiking going on with everyone else with IMRF at retirement. They were taking huge cash outs, and then that was being calculated into their pension calculation. I think Alderman Hanauer and some of the others remember that cleanup that we did.
And that was 12 years ago when that was a major issue, looking at pension spiking. And they did put some controls on it in Springfield, but You saw it happening elsewhere as well. So clearly that's an ongoing issue that Alderman McMiniman wanted to address when it comes to increasing the pay for police officers, especially those who are close to retirement, so that they can, as he says, spike their pension and to get even more as they retire. But he also talked about the increases that the mayor was given the ability to make for command staff at Springfield Police Department.
The other comment was last week the council passed an ordinance giving the mayor exclusive authority and discretion to grant senior police command staff whatever raise she wants to give them. And I think that departs too strongly from past practice where the mayor had to come to the city council to get approval for any pay raise above 5%. The way that ordinance is written, it's got no sunset clause. So this council gave the mayor authority to give unlimited pay raises to command staff, not just during this 12-month period, but the next 12-month period and the next 12-month period, unless the council takes action. And there's no cap on those raises. It could be 10% to someone, 15% to somebody else, 20% to somebody else. There's no caps. And there's no accountability. There's no requirement that the mayor come back to the council and say, what has she just done? So, I was upset when Mayor Langfelder gave Chief Winslow a pay raise towards the end of his career to try to keep him here in the city. I was upset when Mayor Davlin gave then Chief Caldwell a late career pay bump right before he left city employment. He was, by the way, the first police officer that began earning a $100,000 a year pension. So I'm at 38 seconds. So this has nothing to do with our current chief. It has to do with accountability, transparency, and good budgeting. So
Interesting stuff. And that's your Council Corral here on this Wednesday, November 29th. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out and joining us each and every weekday morning live right here on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. If you missed any of the segments earlier, you can check that out. Go to the YouTube page and check out the segments throughout the day. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Have yourself a great day. Appreciate it.